Hello YouTubers. Now today we're going to talk about how to join wires. I have a feeling this video is going to get a few comments, but I'm telling you now, this is the only way to do it. I know a lot of people have their opinion on this, but this is the proper way to do it. Don't care what anyone says. So anyway, so there's obviously loads of different ways of connecting wires. Now what I mean by wires, I'm talking about an ordinary car now. I'm talking about one that hasn't got CAN bus wiring, hasn't got fibre optics, just the old bog standard cars. People use these type of connections. These are called bullet connections. Now they're okay, but I mean they are very temporary. If you put this on the outside of a car in an engine bay, water's going to get to it, it's going to rust, it's going to lose connection, no good. Other people then literally just get the wire, cut the end off both ends. They get them together and they just twist them together. They put a bit of tape over them, and again it's going to do exactly the same thing. Eventually the water's going to get in, it's going to rust, it's going to lose connection. It's not the way to do it. Now there's a couple of ways of doing it. These connections are fantastic, but they are very expensive. Now hopefully you can see that. Basically what that is, in the middle of that is got some it's got some solder, and as you can see on the outside of it, it's got these little tubes. Now you can push the wire into this, press the solder by hand, get a lighter, the solder then melts, and these bits at the end basically are a shrink wrap, and it shrinks around the wire. These are absolutely brilliant, but they're very, very expensive. If you've got a lot of connections doing your car, you can end up spending an absolute fortune. So there's a way just as good as this, but a hell of a lot cheaper. Now, and that basically is soldering. The only way to join wires is to solder. End of story, discussion over. Now again, there's a couple of different ways of doing it. I'm going to show you the wrong way and then the right way. What I've seen some people do is they pare back a lot of the wire. They either put it together and twist it like that, if that's coming across, and they solder that. So they solder the two wires together, but that leaves you a problem, because you have the wire, if you've got two wires going apart, you have to bend that back. Oh, they've come apart. You have to bend that back like that on one side. It's very, well, it's just not right. It's just not right. So don't do it that way. I've seen other people then get the two wires together like this, and they wrap it around, as you can see I'm doing now. So they wrap it around, hopefully that comes across, and they solder that, which again is wrong. It's just not the way you do it. You can't get the solder. I know people are going to argue with this now and say no, I'm wrong, but I'm telling you, it's the wrong way of doing it. The correct way of doing it, and the only way of doing it, I'm just going to cut these to kind of the right size now. So you just pare back the wires, twist them around so they're nice and neat. I'm just going to put them in this just for my handiness, but obviously when you're inside the car you can't be using this, but you'll get the idea. Right, and what I'm going to do is what's called tinning. I'm going to tin the wires, so I'm going to basically put solder on the wires. But I will when I can find my solder. Now, this solder is a bit too thin, but you'll get the idea. So you get your soldering iron. Now again, you got to be careful. If you leave the soldering iron on the wire too long, you will actually heat up and you'll start melting the actual coating on, which you don't want to do. But basically you want to put the soldering iron behind it and wait for it to heat up enough, and then the solder from the top will eventually melt. I'll just get it going a bit. Trying to do this in film is quite difficult. Now, as we can see, the wire is getting hot enough. That is going all the way through. More solder. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So going all the way through, because I'm basically putting the solder. I'm putting the solder from the top, and the soldering iron is underneath. So the solder has to melt all the way down. And let me just zoom in and see if you can see that a bit better. Is the camera going to focus? Nope. Now, that is tinned. That one is tinned, so I'm going to do the same again with that one. But one thing you want to do is before you... Well, I can still tin this, so do one more thing first. I'm getting ahead of myself. Same thing again. And it's also good in mind to have a good clean tip, because if your tip isn't clean and it's dirty, you know, it's not going to melt the solder properly. So just wait a couple of seconds, and we can just see it going now. Once it goes, it just flows really quite quickly. It can just take a few seconds to get going. Now you can see. Hopefully I'm not getting in the way. So we've got, and this wire isn't getting too hot, the actual coating, which is good. Like I said, you don't want to leave it on too long. Now, once you've got both wires tinned, the best way of doing it is getting some heat wrap or shrink wrap or whatever. Obviously this is too big for this wire, but I don't have the right size, so I'm just giving you an idea. So you put the heat wrap, obviously again you only need to cut a little bit of it off. You put the heat wrap in one end first. Once you solder it together, you then slide this, well I'll show you. So we'll basically now, and now this is the correct way of soldering. So once I get that there like that, I then basically put these two together, side by side. Now this is the tricky part, it can be fiddly, especially if you're underneath a dash or something like that. But basically, side by side, if it's going to stay for me, which it won't, which is typical. Now, that's side by side. Now, all I've got to do, because it's pre-tinned, I can literally just heat it, if it's going to stay for me. I'll try from the top just for handiness sake. No, it's just moving too much. So what I'm going to do is the same again. Feed the wire from the top, put the soldering iron underneath. Yeah, stop moving. And watch this. Once it goes, it'll go. Getting there now, going all the way through, it's heating on both of them. Now, that is the correct way of doing it. End of story, end of discussion. Comment what you want, I'm telling you, that is the correct way. Now, again, they're not too hot, but these are nice and strong now. I mean, I will not be able to pull that apart, and I'm trying. I really am. That is a proper. The camera to zoom in. Put my hand underneath it, maybe. There we go. Look, proper solder connection. The solder's gone all the way through the wire, so even if the top somehow gets rusty or gets some sort of water on it, it's not going to do it internally. And then all you do is with your shrink wrap, is you slide your shrink wrap across. you get a lighter or something, you know, and as you heat this, this will shrink onto it. It'll form a seal, and that's it. You don't need any tape, because the problem is once you use tape and stuff, again, the water can get into the tape. You need to get the correct size heat wrap for your wire, and it will leave, when it's finished, a really tight water seal type thing. You get your heat wrap too big, water will come in and you're going to have problems. But that is the correct way on how to solder or join wires in a car. End of story. So there we go. Nice quick video. Look, hope it helps. Thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one.